This is Business Decoded podcast with Ronnie Spellman. An informal chats with top business moguls as they share their stories of failure and success in a fun and relaxed way. Get entertained, educated, and unlock the secrets to success.
Welcome to the Business Decoded podcast with Ronnie Spellman. I am here with a new friend, Jeff Bednar. Jeff, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
You're the founder of Profound Foods, and I became aware of you through quite a few friends. And I reached out to you and said, Jeff, we've got to connect. And then I happened to see you at the Dallas Arboretum for a big chef event. And you were there handing out some delightful food from your farm. I'm so excited to have you on the program. Welcome.
Yeah, excited to be here.
So you hadn't had farming in your entire career or across generations in your family. You're new to farming. Before you got into farming, you were in real estate and your family owned a car wash business. But let's talk about the farming community. What took you to farming? Then we can kind of go back into some of your history. But why farming? Why would you indulge in a business that is really hard to get into? It requires a lot of land and a lot of startup cost, I presume.
Yeah, it is an expensive way to have a business. Yeah. When I sold my half of the real estate company that I had, we were looking at what was going to be our next company to start. And in real estate, I found that it was very extractive. So pay as little as you can and sell it for as high as you can. And so it's just trying to extract value. And so I wanted to do something that would be very additive and make a difference in our community.
Interesting.
When we came across, and that happened to be at the same time that I got really interested in food. And then, the next thing is, where is our food coming from? And trying to go to farmers markets and restaurants that have farm to table. And it was a really difficult thing to do in North Texas. There's just not that many farms growing food here.
Right.
And so that's where the idea was sparked of, well, if you don't know where your food's coming from, maybe we should grow our own.
And why did you, and this may sound weird, but why did you begin to care about food and where it came from? What kind of evolved in your world that created that interest?
I was diagnosed with a connective tissue disorder called Marfan syndrome.
Okay.
And so I was told that I was going to have to be on blood thinners for the rest of my life and that I needed an open heart surgery.
Oh, wow.
So 7 years ago, I ended up having an open heart surgery, cracked my chest open, 1,000 stitches. They put a sleeve around my aortic valve. And so that's, you are what you eat. So getting interested in food is like, man, at the time I had 2 little girls and now they're, 2 teenage girls.
Right.
But it was really just thinking about, where is our food coming from? What's in it? How do I not have to be on medication for the rest of my life?
Right.
And after the heart surgery, and I've healed up from that, I haven't had to take any pills at all. So
how young were you, by the way, when that happened?
I was 36.
Oh my gosh!
So I guess it's been 9 years now.
Wow.
So 45. Yeah.
That is hard to receive at 36, especially when you have a young family.
Absolutely. And it was the year after that my dad had the same surgery and my aunt had the same surgery. We all kind of found out at the same time that we had enlarged aortic valves.
Okay. And so food wasn't, the interesting part is I've spoken with a lot of friends in my lifetime. I had a really good friend who was a chiropractor. He was into nutrition. And he said the same thing. Your food and how you eat and what you eat can resolve so many issues along with stress. Yeah. So stress can reduce a lot of the health issues. But walk me through that journey then. That I didn't realize that there was a health issue for you that led to it, and that's a serious one.
Yeah.
Wow.
Everything kind of started happening at the same time, right? So when my kids were little, we said, hey, we're not going to feed them any fast food. And when I was managing the car washes, we were eating fast food every day. When I was in high school, all of that kind of thing. And when I met my wife, she's South African Israeli. Okay. And so she cooks every day. And so when I met her, she started making just like chicken and a little Israeli salad. And I started feeling better. And when I finally gave up fast food and sodas and energy drinks and all of that, I realized that heartburn wasn't something you just had to deal with. You just don't have heartburn if you don't eat crappy food.
And that's an interesting point. So people get the heartburn and then they take one of those pink items, right, to soothe their heartburn when you just change your diet and you can resolve that without taking additional medication. Yep. Interesting.
Absolutely.
So that led you to at least ponder, how do you improve the health of other people?
Yeah, so when creating the farm, we were really looking at how do we make an impact for our family.
Right.
I started getting into a bunch of documentaries, and so we were watching all these documentaries about our environment, and basically agriculture is the number one polluter, way more than oil and gas or anything like that.
Interesting.
And so, how can you do agriculture without having to use all the chemicals and things that are polluting the planet? Right. So that way, when my kids get older, they'll be glaciers to visit. There'll be animals alive, oceans that aren't polluted.
What made you decide to create a business out of it? So it was personal at first.
Yeah.
But then you decided maybe there's a business opportunity here and I can do two things. I can help the community learn what I learned, but also generate revenue that's, allows us to survive.
Yeah,
so you kind of do both.
So we couldn't find very many farmers in North Texas. And that's kind of just the idea of it was like, well, if there's none here, what am I missing? Like, why isn't there more local farmers growing produce? And that was kind of the spark of it. And because we started getting into the farm to table scene and started going to symposiums on, food and agriculture, and I was going to conferences, it just seemed like, we had some restaurant chef friends. And so we talked to the chefs and kind of went with this minimum viable product of what is something you guys could use. And so at the time it was like, let's start with some microgreens and some leafy greens. And then we just kind of kept listening to what the chefs wanted and growing and expanding. So we started very small in a little 2,000 square foot greenhouse.
Oh, wow.
And then we got up to about 35,000 square feet of greenhouses.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So walk us through that journey though, from, starting, because if I remember, we've been on a lot of calls as well within the agricultural community, and I've heard you mention your story, but you just didn't go from this is an idea to starting the next day and buying farmland. I think there was a period of time that you did a lot of research and, as you mentioned, attending conferences, but you spent time learning.
So I actually kind of jumped into it. So, we another thing that was happening at the same time as all of these other pieces with my kids and my health and the family was we lived in an HOA community.
Okay.
And so I was like, hey, let's grow our own food. I wanted to do a greenhouse. The HOA said we couldn't do one that could be seen over our fence.
Right.
And so I started looking for property, and the property that we found had greenhouses existing. And so we sold our house in an HOA, and we moved into a little teeny 800 square foot barn dominium on a couple of acres. And then it was like, let's learn how to grow. And before buying the farm, I had never had a house plant.
Okay.
And so as soon as we bought the farm, I joined the Master Gardeners program and really kind of doubled in on going to visit other farms and other places.
You never had a house planned before buying the farm?
Yeah. I had no agricultural experience whatsoever. So,
amazing.
So I just basically got on YouTube, and I'd sit there and watch YouTube videos about how to do this and how to do that. And I knew that I wanted to do something in a controlled environment.
Sure.
So it could be year round. And I also knew that at the time, I wanted to do something with aquaponics.
Okay.
And that's where you have fish that are providing the nutrients. And we ended up converting over a few years later to hydroponics for most of our production. But I kind of had an idea of how I wanted to grow. And then the next thing was figuring out what do we want to grow and where is it going to go.
So how long did it take you watching YouTube videos to figure out your game plan?
It took 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
that's what I remember hearing.
Yeah. So that 3-year period before we sold anything, I basically was just driving my neighbors crazy and my family like, hey, I got some more lettuce and tomatoes. And we just donated everything and gave stuff away to friends and family for the first 3 years until I could get consistent enough of growing and, figure out how to do pest control and how to manage everything.
So here's what I want you to do, because that's amazing to me. Now, you're in this role. You've kind of become the expert. Everyone looks to you now in this North Texas market to help them understand how to create a small local farm. But walk us through the 4 parts of your business, understanding how to deal with pest control, because there's so many different ways to deal with pest controls. There's some big players out there in the agricultural business, Cargill and some of these others, Monsanto, that have these huge verticals. They're doing a little bit of everything within the agricultural space. But walk us through what it looks like to manage a local farm. Again, from everything, pest controls, maybe not using or using pest control chemicals. Walk us through that process. And then one day, I don't know if you've gotten into the bees, but I'd love to tell.
Yeah,
I'm sure you have a bee story somewhere, because they're so important to the agriculture community. But walk us through what the farm looked like.
With the 35,000 square feet, we kind of built up to that. So we started real small. And one of the things that I wanted to do that'd be different than the big guys is I wanted a very diverse farm.
Okay.
So on basically all the farms in the United States, for the most part, are all monoculture. So they're growing one thing and a lot of it.
Okay.
And so I wanted to have lots of things. And, when you're in a city, and we were kind of in a suburban area, we wanted to do a lot of agritourism and have people share what we're up to with the community and teach people how to do what we're doing. And so when you have a lot of different diverse crops, that helps out. So like I said, we had indoor grow rooms with microgreens, so flood and drain tables, automatic watering, LED lights. In the greenhouses, we had lots of different styles of growing. So we had deep water culture. So that's a big pond full of rafts that are floating with lettuce growing on top of it.
Yes.
There's NFTs, which is basically like a gutter style system.
Right.
And plants are growing out of these gutters that are being automatically irrigated. We grew tomatoes and peppers in Dutch buckets. So it's a 5-gallon bucket. And then you're irrigating that, or fertigating, which is when you're adding the fertilizer to the irrigation. But we were growing 350 different types of crops. So leafy greens, culinary herbs, fruiting crops. We had rooting crops, raised bed gardens. We had some out in the soil in big plots. We did a lot of composting. So every leaf that wasn't perfect, we would throw into our compost pile, then reuse that into our soil beds.
Okay.
We did bees up until 2 years ago when I found out I was allergic to bees.
Okay.
So I found out by blacking out and getting very ill when I got stung. So that was kind of the end of our keeping of bees.
Sure.
But we've raised ducks, guinea fowl, chickens. We've got about 50 chickens right now. We've done earthworm farms. We raised meat rabbits for 7 years. So
just meat rabbits.
Yep.
Okay.
So
who is your customer for the meat rabbits?
We would mostly just use those for our family, but we do host a lot of events. And so we would actually process the rabbits and then serve them to people that come up for one of our farm-to-table experiences.
Very cool. And I know that you were giving tours as well, which was fantastic.
Yeah, we were touring around 5,000 people a year through the farm.
5,000?
Yeah, so homeschool groups, Girl Scouts. We hosted lots of farm-to-table dinners and events. We'd have corporations that wanted to do like a work day, and they'd bring out volunteers. So quite a few people got to see our farm.
I had a chance to visit your friend, good friend Alan Brown, and his Timberview farmstead out in the Fort Worth area. And if yours is anything similar to his, it was an amazing experience. I know they have student groups come out. Just being in a farm environment and knowing and understanding. Some years ago, maybe a few decades ago, I remember talking to a friend of mine that was working the same thing, help young people understand their food and where it comes from. And I think he asked one of the kids a question like, where do you get, your meat or your carrots? Where do they come from? Hoping that he'd get an answer about in the ground or someplace. And they mentioned one of the grocery stores, right? For them, it grew in the grocery store. It didn't grow on a farm.
Yep.
And so to have that educational experience and opportunity is just amazing.
Yeah. My wife was doing a tour for some Girl Scouts one time. She said, hey, what do you eat for breakfast?
Right.
And she was hoping to hear like eggs and stuff.
Right.
And it was Pop-Tarts and donuts and it was just like nothing from the farm, and it's like, well, we've got, your food is here.
Right. I know on one of the calls we were in, just speaking of that subject, in the farm deserts and how do you get fresh vegetables and fruits into some of these communities.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? And not from a policy perspective, but how do we help farms like yours continue to thrive and provide local grown food? Now, the cool thing for me is seeing this evolution with places like H-E-B and some of these other grocery stores where they're trying to buy local. Restaurants are the same. It makes me feel good that they're trying to support local small growers.
Yeah, absolutely. So the food desert problem is a really interesting one. And I've been on some boards and in lots and lots of meetings over the years about like, how do you solve some of these problems? And I think that the biggest problem that we have now with young farmers is access to land.
Okay.
You can't pay hundreds of thousands of dollars an acre and grow vegetables you sell for $1.
Right.
And so the land access is probably the biggest thing that's preventing young people from getting into farming. Because we have people come through on the tours and they're excited about it, but there's not very much money in being a farmer.
Right.
And if you look at any other industry, you can actually make a living and support your family.
Right.
When most of the farmers that I know in North Texas have off-farm income. They've got a day job, their wife brings in the revenue or the husband. And that's one of the biggest problems that we need to address is how can we get land that's affordable for the growers?
Right. I know from my business side, I'm always looking at businesses and I look at scalability. So with software, for the most part, you create a good software, you can almost scale it to any level.
Definitely.
In part today, because we're not sending out discs for people to download, you download the software online.
Right.
So your scaling is almost unlimited. In farming, you can't. There's a threshold that you can, for whatever acreage you have, you can't necessarily farm more than the acreage will allow you to farm.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting dilemma on scalability. And then the other piece that we spoke about earlier was the impact of weather and bugs and conditions that you can't manage or prevent.
Yep.
How do you resolve those items when they take out entire crop?
There's few businesses that have as many variables as farming.
Right.
We'd have, if it rained for a week, that means there's no sunshine.
Right.
It means the plants aren't growing. and you got no control over that. And then you've got standing orders with restaurants or wherever. You've got to get the product there, but it's not growing. How do you manage and mitigate all those issues?
So what'd you do?
We figured out a lot of systems over the years, and mostly, the way that I learn is by talking to people and interacting. Mm-hmm. So, I spent those 3 years in the beginning going around and visiting farms, asking what their problems were, looking at how they design the layout, where they put things, asking them questions like, how do you handle your pest control?
Right.
And so we opted for a kind of a way of growing that, because of the variability of our plants, we didn't have to worry about pest pressure nearly as much as the monoculture farms.
Okay.
Because if you've got one field of something and you get aphids in there, it's going to spread immediately across everything, and then you have to spray, bad pesticides on things to kill the bugs and everything else, and it kills the bees as well. But when you've got different crops all over, you're usually not going to get one insect that's going to come in and wipe everything out. You might lose your basil, but then your lettuce is still going to be just fine.
Right.
So that's one of the ways that we mitigated that. And then we only would use organic certified pesticide stuff to kind of answer that question from before. Okay. Things like neem oil, insecticidal soap. So if we were going to spray something on, and we did have to spray on occasion, it was only organic certified items that could be eaten the same day. Right. Things that I would want my kids to eat, and it would, everyone's going to be okay.
Gotcha. Are they costly?
Podcasts are so popular, even monkeys are doing it.
75% of Americans listen to podcasts monthly. That's 210 million people in the United States alone. And yes, podcasts are profitable. Joe Rogan is making $30 million per year. Your content, your knowledge is worth sharing. Don't just dream it, do it. Visit AndyCostaFilms.com/podcast and turn your content into leaks.
They're very expensive, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and I don't think a lot of people understand the cost, from the equipment to the materials like the chemicals for operating a farm.
Yeah, one of the things that blows a lot of people away. So we had several different greenhouses. My larger greenhouse was 24,000 square feet.
Oh, wow.
And so it had 7 hoops on it.
Right.
And when I had it insured a couple of years ago, we had to come up with a replacement value. So to build that greenhouse right now today would cost over $600,000 before you put anything inside of it.
Oh, gosh.
So all of the equipment, your hydroponic stuff, your everything else would be on top of that $600,000. And then, if you're paying $300,000 an acre and you put you're in for millions of dollars before you've been able to pull anything out and been able to sell that head of lettuce for $3.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's pretty interesting.
Okay. It's, I was just thinking about this one farm that I saw the other day on television. I think it was a peach farm. Mm-hmm. And you probably know this already. So in the peach farms, if they have moisture that's standing on them for a period of time, it destroys the peaches. There has to be this balance, because for peaches, their skins are a little more sensitive than, let's say, apples.
Yeah.
So what they have a contract with a helicopter company. And I thought, well, how does this work? They aren't spraying it with anything. They fly the helicopters really low over the farms, and it works as a fan. It blows the water off. But, it's also another expense. But I thought, how brilliant is that? We've come up with some really neat things in the farming industry, but a lot of it does add additional cost to it.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my peach farming buddies over in near Tyler, Texas, Winona Orchards, and they have heaters in their field. So if it's going to be too cold, they'll actually heat the trees out in the field. And it's another interesting thing is North Texas is actually one of the most difficult places in the country to grow food.
Okay.
Because of our weather variability.
Right.
In the wintertime, it could be 90 and then be freezing the next day, and then 90 the day after that. And plants don't like the variability.
Right.
So,
well, and I've been in Texas now for a few years, and I thought we had variability in California when it went from 60 to 65, 80 to 82. Yeah. But no, you're absolutely right. It's amazing. I think in my first year here, I was in for one of the winters, and I think it was 80-something, 90 one day, and then 2 or 3 weeks later, it was 20 degrees.
Right.
It was amazing. And then we had an ice storm and a snowstorm, and then 2 weeks later, it was back to 80 degrees. I thought, this is really an interesting place. And then the week after that, there was a tornado to come through. But there is it's a beautiful place and great weather, but it does vary oftentimes through periods of times of the year. And then the summertime, it's 100 degrees.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. I've always liked having the heirloom product, which is a little more imperfect. And you mentioned something about making things perfect or having imperfect leaves, and you put them in to have them recycled. Was there a market for imperfect vegetables? I don't know if it's a large market, but so much of us were in tune to having that glossy apple,
right,
that we don't know that it doesn't necessarily look that polished.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a quick interesting thing about apples is the average apple at the grocery store is 9 months old. It was harvested 9 months ago, and then it's been coated and gassed and all of that. Right. So that's my little apple story.
Absolutely.
But, yeah, imperfect stuff. We would, at one point before COVID, we only sold to restaurants and chefs. And so we were working with higher end restaurants. And those chefs are very particular about things, but they're particular about the flavor of things, not how something looks.
Right.
And so we kind of knew what chefs and restaurants would accept different things, or we'd call them and say, hey, we've got a bunch of stuff that's overgrown. You know, can you cook it into something? And so kind of having those personal relationships with the end consumer really made a difference for us because we were able to sell almost everything that we grew. Even if something was imperfect, they would use it in a stew or a sauce or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time through the years taking my kids to apple orchards, both in California and North Carolina. Some great apple orchards out there. There's nothing more special than picking your own apple and then making your own apple juice or apple cider.
Yeah.
You know, and many might not realize apple cider doesn't have cinnamon in it. And it's just squished apples.
Yeah.
and they had this hand press machine. You turn the wheel and a hand press. The best tasting juice of any kind.
Or add a little yeast to it and wait a few weeks.
Right. But an amazing product. And then strawberry picking was just a fun thing of ours to do. And so I can only imagine the experience of you seeing these items grow and recognizing how an amazing process it is.
Absolutely.
So what's next for you now as you continue? The other thing I was going to ask you, you've spent so much time learning the business from scratch. Are you intending to write a book or create YouTube videos to help people shorten that learning curve? Because your knowledge is just incredible.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we've been exploring, that, what's going to be next as far as like, how do we get some of this knowledge out and share it with other people? Right. So I definitely think we're going to be doing some consulting. I've got a couple of farmers that have asked me for some advice. So we'll do some farm consulting like that.
Okay.
We've been toying with the idea of doing a book specifically around agritourism and how to help farms host their own farm-to-table dinners.
Sure.
Over the years with our farm-to-table dinner series, that was wildly more profitable than farming.
Right.
And being able to have that additional revenue source made a big difference for the farmer. I think being able to share that knowledge would be pretty beneficial with a lot of folks. So
I think it would by far. I mean, just the amount of time that you took to make that transition. Tell me about your work beforehand. You mentioned that you were in real estate. Know that your family was in the car wash business. Yeah. You sound like you've been around entrepreneurship for most of your life and career.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. When I was, I think I was 10 or 11 years old, I started a vending machine company. And so I inherited like a couple $1,000s, went out and bought some vending machines, placed them with my brother and sister at 10 or 11 years old.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so my dad had to drive me to go fill, to Costco or Sam's Club or whatever at the time and buy candy bars and stock this machine. And then, in college, I started a shuttle company. And so I was shuttling people back and forth to the airport and vans that I owned. So I always had an entrepreneurial spirit.
So this was pre-Uber, I believe. So
Okay,
that's fantastic.
It would have been in 99, 98, 99.
So you had your own Uber. Yeah. Without the software technology behind it.
I got a job as a valet, and I kept seeing how much the shuttle guys were getting paid to go from downtown Austin to the airport.
Right.
And I was like, well, they'd show up and they'd throw me $20 when I called them. I was like, well, what if I just called my van? And the valet company I worked for had like 9 hotels, and I knew all the other valets. So I just went around and said, hey, every time you guys send me business, I'll throw you $20.
Oh, wow.
And so we actually built a nice little shuttle business while I was going to college full time and working full time.
And then where'd you go to school?
Just at the Austin Community College at the time. Yeah.
That is amazing. I think being an entrepreneur is something that I know is teachable. But to hear you talk about how you started at 10 and how it really was in your DNA, how do we continue to give that experience to people?
Yeah.
So that they're becoming entrepreneurs. I think it's such a great place to be, to create your own destiny and to build something that can generate revenue and opportunities for other people from a work perspective. But how do you help someone come up with that entrepreneurship mindset?
That was honestly one of the reasons why we started the farm, is kind of looking at what business is next. Is we wanted the business to be around the house.
Right.
And that way, when we bought the farm, they were 4 and 6. So we wanted them to grow up inside of this entrepreneurial environment.
Nice.
And it's kind of interesting because it actually kind of backfired a little bit. My older daughter has said entrepreneurship is not for her. She wants to get a job somewhere because of the ups and downs and challenges. And She's very much things need to be in order, and entrepreneurship is, in my experience, been a lot of chaos.
Right.
Yeah, I think, I think that the skills are definitely teachable. And, you definitely can't be someone who's very risk adverse,
Yeah, absolutely.
You got to be willing to jump off and not know what it's going to look like.
Right. Well, I want you to come back on our next program, and I'd love for you to just talk about the ups and downs of owning a business, because I think that's the kind of information that people need to understand and recognize. And I hear it all the time from people that have now built billion-dollar businesses. The first 10 years were not easy. Right. Whether you're coming out of your credit card or bank account for payroll, yep. right, which happens all the time, or in your case, moving to a barn-dominium to get the business launched. That's a huge sacrifice that a lot of people don't think about. They still want their 3,000, 5,000, whatever size home, and to have that level of consistency, and it just doesn't work that way. I was with a good friend whose father built an amazing business. And she said, so the father sold the business. She's now 50 years old and having to make that transition because the business was sold. But she said something to me that I found fascinating. She said, I couldn't, growing up, she couldn't understand why they didn't have any money and just moved into a really nice home. Mm-hmm. Because of those ups and downs, in peaks and valleys as a business owner, you still have to provide for the family. Yeah. But sometimes you just feel poor in the process.
Absolutely. And I have the most amazing wife ever, because, we went from that 3,500 square foot house in suburbia to living in a little teeny barn dominium. Right. And, she also has a corporate job, which allowed me to be the entrepreneur for the last 20 years we've been married. Right. Having the consistency there while I'm taking these risks and, building different companies. So
I want to definitely talk more about that in the next show, but let's go back to your real estate and your car wash as well, because you had a business at 10. What possessed you to have a business in the vending arena?
I think it was probably my dad noticing. So we'd go to this like educational center, and maybe he wanted a snack or something, and he was kind of like, "Hey, there's an idea here." So then we said, well, we should get a machine and put it in, because there's so many people that come through here, and so it was kind of a joint idea in that. Yeah. And then, my dad, I don't actually remember how he came up with the idea for the car wash in particular, but I was in Austin doing the shuttle company and being a valet and going to school. And my dad said, hey, we're opening a car wash up here in Plano. Right. And, I think a couple of months after it was built, I moved up to do the grand opening, and I'm a car guy. I love cars. And so it was really kind of perfect. And I was the general manager of the car wash for 10 years. We ended up having a couple other car washes as well. But, I love being outside. I love working with my hands. And, we had just a great staff of people working for us. Right.
Now, you mentioned something really unique when we were off air about the car wash business, that weather on the phones changed the business, the industry.
Yeah. So we started the car wash in 2001. Right. And, just a couple of years after that, everyone had weather on their phones. Before that, you were reading the newspaper or the television. And as soon as you would notice that it was going to rain 10 days from now or 7 days from now, people would stop washing their cars. So it actually dramatically hurt the car wash business. Right. And so that was kind of interesting. And, we could talk about car wash stories all day. But
and when I was saying to you that the car wash business is now resurging, there's so many new car wash places these days. And I see the signs. You pay $5 or $10 to get your car washed, which seems really inexpensive. Right. And then you run them you drive them through these machines now.
Yep. The tunnels.
I actually like, washing my own car. Yeah. That's just my personal preference, just because I need to do something that I feel is productive for me. But what's happening in the car wash industry now? Why the change, you think, or resurgence?
Yeah, I actually, honestly, I haven't followed it very much. Right. We sold that business in 2011. Okay. So I haven't followed it very much, but I like wash my own car. Right. We kept all the detail stuff when we sold the business. Right. So I'll go out there and buff, polish, wax, ceramic coat, all that kind of stuff.
So I have to tell you, when I had my first car in high school, I went out and got a great car wash. It was a Ford Mustang. Love the car, T-top. Yep. And I go out and I washed the car and I put all the wax on. It was really high, and I forget which one it was. McGraw's one of those. And I put the wax on the entire car before deciding to take it off.
Yeah. And it got really difficult to come off. Yeah.
It wouldn't come off. Yeah. And I had to rewash the car and go through that process again. But anyway, so much has changed even since then.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for the Profound Foods, how does someone reach you? How does someone learn more about the organization and what you've done?
Yeah, so just basically on our website. So we kind of talked about the farm a little bit. We didn't really talk about the food hub and what the food hub does, but I recently actually just sold the food hub to another company that's going to take on and put some more resources behind growing it. So at some point, the name's going to change in the next 90 to 120 days, but right now everything's still listed on our food hub. So we distribute food for 65 other farmers, ranchers, and producers in 78 zip codes in North Texas. So yeah, profoundfoods.com, and they can shop kind of like Amazon, but it's all local food.
Right. You can do this for me, and I want to come back to this, but we have, just a moment to go.
Yeah.
COVID really changed your business as well. And tell us how.
Well, pre-COVID, we had 130 restaurants we were supplying in Dallas and Collin County, and we only worked with chefs and restaurants. And in 1 week, the first week of shutdown, we went to 4 restaurants. And so we had this whole infrastructure of farmers and ranchers and restaurants that we had to make a pivot in order to stay alive. So we launched retail home deliveries. And we could never have known how big that was going to get to, but basically we just said, hey, everyone can order online now. It's not only for restaurants. And that was the same time people were afraid to go to grocery stores. Right. We were wiping off our apples with bleach and stuff. Right. So the people started ordering. They'd leave a cooler on their porch. We would deliver food from 65 farmers and ranchers directly to people's homes. Oh, wow. They get a text message when it arrived. And it kind of blew up. We did 3 times our best week in sales the first week of home deliveries. Right. And that's when we were only in 4 zip codes. It's
amazing you were able to make that transition so quickly.
Yeah, we were very fortunate because we actually got a grant from the U.S. government, the USDA, for $500,000, which allowed us to buy a fleet of delivery vans and build out a website. So all we really had to do was go onto our website and basically unlock it, so it wasn't just invite only. It was to anybody could sign up if they were in the right delivery zip codes.
So you had already implemented the programs.
Yeah, we were ready. We were ready for scale.
Okay, that is interesting.
We just didn't know how to scale at the time. We were just like more restaurants, but we kind of tapped out on how many kind of restaurants will buy from local farmers.
Sure.
So the opening of retail changed everything.
Right. And from a business perspective, I mention this all the time to businesses, is being prepared for what you don't know that you need to be prepared for yet. Yep. Right. And it just worked out that you were already in a position that could help you during COVID, but you didn't know it.
Right.
How helpful it would be because no one knew COVID was coming.
Yep.
And the idea of losing nearly 100% of your business overnight is just scary from a business perspective, but you were able to pivot. And then you saw some good results out of that pivot.
Absolutely. And we also underestimated the impact we could make in the community by serving people directly at their homes.
Okay, interesting.
So that was, it was profound.
Right.
Yeah. I like that.
I like that a lot, Profound Foods. Jeff, it's been a pleasure having you. I wish more people could and would get into the agriculture business because it's a great business to be. It's been around for so long here in the U.S. It's so important to our communities and to the country and to our state. And what's fascinating to me, I've heard so many people talk about you, and you might not recognize this, but you are a leader even when you don't realize that you're a leader because so many people are following what you're doing and they're trying to mimic what you're doing and they're learning from what you're doing. So you've had a huge impact in the agriculture community, especially for small farmers. Appreciate it. Sir. Thanks for joining us on the program. And I look forward to having you again next time.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us on Business Decoded with Ronnie Spellman.
Thank you for listening to Business Decoded podcast with Ronnie Spellman. Please be sure to subscribe and share and stay tuned for more incredible Business Decoded episodes.